The Marlins making moves at the catching position, trading for Ali Sanchez and Christian Bethancourt, one of the off-season additions, DFA'd. Also, Jesus Luzardo headed into this series, expected to pitch, has now been scratched for his next start. Tons to get into. This is Locked on Marlins.
You are Locked on Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked on Marlins. This is your daily Marlins pod. I am your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, at Miami Marlins _ UK. You're listening to the pod. Firstly, happy Friday. As you can tell, if you're watching, it is very sunny here in the UK, which is glorious. I just want to call out, firstly, this is your team every day, and thanks for making Locked on Marlins your first listen of the day. Second thing I want to call out, I've had a Friday beer, the first beer, the only beer, maybe, but I've had my first Friday beer, and it's gone straight to my head. Do you ever have that, where literally you have one can of beer, like a session IPA, and immediately I was just like, oh man, I'm feeling it. So I just wanted to call that out as well. Reminder, there's a YouTube channel. Make sure you hit subscribe over on the YouTube channel. It is also called Locked on Marlins. There's tons to get into here today, guys. But this episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Tax Network USA. And did you know that it's never too late to resolve your tax issues with the IRS? Don't wait. Reduce your tax debt and get help from a team of licensed tax professionals. Call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/locked-on. All right, guys. So the Marlins have been making some moves after the Cardinals series. They acquired via trade for cash considerations, I believe, Ali Sanchez. So he was acquired. The question then was, firstly, is Ali Sanchez any good? And the second question then is, what role will he play? Is he going to AAA? But why is he going to AAA? The Marlins have got plenty of catchers there at AAA. Like, the things seem to be working. So that was, I think, where the cogs were turning initially. Like, what's the rationale for this move? What don't we know? I think is maybe the way I was thinking of it, because something didn't fit. However, the Marlins then make the move overnight, it seems. I don't know what time this news dropped or when this transaction was made, but the Marlins are moving on from Christian Bethancourt. So they are shaking up their catching room on the big league roster. Nick Fortes remains. Bethancourt, a offseason acquisition, DFA'd. Ali Sanchez in. And so is this a surprise? In some ways, yes, but in other ways, no. I think when you look at Christian Bethancourt's production this year, I mean, it was a very slow start by anyone's metrics. And he started to kind of get things going a little bit. You know, I mean, it was an 0-4 for a long period with Bethancourt. So by that level, he improved as things went on. His last hit as a Marlin ends up being a home run in that Cardinals series. So Bethancourt, when you look at the body of work in terms of production, he ends his Marlins season anyway, the Marlins career, with a -0.2 WAR and a 159 average, an OPS plus of 29, an OPS itself of 466. 2 bombs mixed in there, though. No stolen bags, unsurprisingly, but just 13 hits in total. Christian Bethancourt, I would say, was, when I look back at what he was projected to be, effectively, this is a guy that was a specialist at controlling the running game with a little bit of power in his stick. When I look back to the episode when he was acquired, it was probably an emergency pod. We likely spoke about Christian Bethancourt for 30 minutes. It was maybe 25 minutes too long, nevertheless. When we look at what we were expecting from Bethancourt, it was solid D, a veteran presence, and a guy that has demonstrated an ability to control the running game through an absolute cannon of an arm. From an offensive side, it's always been a little bit patchy, but there's power in that stick. And so considering where the Marlins had been with Jacob Stallings, anything was an upgrade. Frankly, if you put Gene Segura in catching gear, the view would have been this would have been an upgrade on Jacob Stallings. And somehow, I think this actually was a downgrade on Jacob Stallings. And the funny thing, too, is Jacob Stallings goes on to, the Rockies. Granted, obviously, Coors can do funny things for funny guys and et cetera, but all of a sudden, Jacob Stallings, I mean, wouldn't it be wild if Jacob Stallings was an all-star this year as a Rocky? I mean, I haven't even looked at the Rockies roster. Obviously, they're not having the best of campaigns, so I can't imagine they are littered with all-star candidates. I mean, could Jacob Stallings be that for the Rockies? I mean, that would be completely wild after the his Marlins tenure and the way things dropped off both defensively. Offensively, it was always a struggle, but defensively as well, it was definitely some regression there for Stallings. But he's had a bounce-back campaign. Nevertheless, the Marlins decided not to continue with Stallings, likely for a money-saving purpose. Equally, the production was not good. You go to Bethancourt, a guy that Peter Bendix knew from his time in Tampa. And it's fair to say, and I mean, Bendix addressed this pretty early on in the campaign when asked about the catching position. What are you seeing at the catching spot? Not good. I mean, what can he say? What can he frankly say? I mean, the production at catcher has not been good enough. Clearly, the Marlins have the worst duo or tandem in Major League Baseball by some distance, offensively in particular. And so it's been a big problem. For the Fish. So am I surprised they move on from Bethancourt? You can't be surprised when you're putting up those numbers. Am I surprised at this timing? Slightly. Only because, we've seen, the sense that like the veterans are going to be given, full reign up until the deadline to, take the at-bats, protect the younger guys, whatever it might be, et cetera, et cetera. But the Marlins here, I guess, spotted a guy that they felt maybe had some upside. A younger guy, obviously, in Ali Sanchez, and a guy that maybe they see some upside in. And so the opportunity's there. You make the move, you bring him in. And in reality, it's a sensible move to not disrupt the AAA situation and to actually move on from a guy that, clearly he's in arbitration at this point. For the production, the best that Bethancourt should be seeing is league minimum. And so the Marlins were not going to be continuing with Bethancourt next year. So in reality, the only reason I'm saying this is because how the Tim Anderson situation, in the sense that you were given of he's going to be given every opportunity. The funny thing is with Tim Anderson, he turned it around. He's turned it around recently, become the new Arias. He's found his batting champ vibes, where all of a sudden, since this bereavement stint, he's come back a different guy, which is very interesting. Bethancourt as well, like I mentioned, he was improving from the start that he had, which, I mean, it's impossible not to improve for Bethancourt. So the timing is surprising, but it isn't surprising. And am I glad the Marlins gives a younger guy a look? Absolutely. There's no future here for Bethancourt within the Marlins organization. The one final thing I would say on Bethancourt, and this for me is the most interesting but hidden element here. When you look at what Bethancourt delivered to the Marlins on the field, it was way below par. Defensively and offensively, particularly offensively, but defensively, it was definitely not as good as advertised, I would say. However, what we have seen specifically this year, and if we remember why Bethancourt was acquired and what specialist traits that he had, he was renowned for controlling the run game, having a cannon of an arm and throwing guys out. Bethancourt, we haven't really seen that from. But the one guy that we have seen that from that has never been able to do this in the time with Marlins is Nick Fortes. All of a sudden, Nick Fortes is looking like a completely different guy when controlling the running game. Nick Fortes defensively has taken loads of leaps forward, in his time with the Marlins, particularly kind of, blocking pitches, et cetera, et cetera. He's been elite at that aspect. But the missing component is the arm has been a problem, and clearly the offense is a problem as well. He flashed ability early on, Nick Fortes, but the arm, with the changes in rules and the aggressiveness on the bases, Nick Fortes has been exposed. But what we're seeing now is a significant change for Nick Fortes. And this is maybe the hidden value that Christian Bethancourt has delivered to this Marlins team. Could Christian Bethancourt have effectively been a glorified player coach? Was his role? Yes, his role was as a player. But actually, what we've now seen is a veteran guy joins the roster and then becomes and takes that kind of coaching developmental pathway with a guy like Nick Fortes and helps to take Nick Fortes' game to the next level. I don't know if that's what's happened. I'm kind of, putting two and two together and coming up with four, where Bethancourt had a trait, a skill. Nick Fortes didn't. Next thing is Nick Fortes has taken massive leaps in that specific skill and that trait. How closely linked to that is Christian Bethancourt? I don't know. But it feels to me like there's some coincidence there. And perhaps maybe at this point, Bethancourt has served his purpose here with the Marlins. He's taken Nick Fortes on, and the reality is Nick Fortes has nothing really left to learn from Bethancourt. Bethancourt not producing. They see Ali Sanchez. Let's pick him up. Let's take a flyer. Let's see what we can do. So just wanted to signal that one. That is just a pure guess, a pure assumption from my perspective. Let me know what you think in the comments on YouTube for that one. If anyone actually knows this specific information, then let me know. For the guys listening, to any of the players listening, to any of the coaches listening, let me know. I'd be interested to understand, because what we have seen is a massive leap for Fortes. Bethancourt's no longer with the organization now. Let's see if Fortes can remain at that level. Very interesting. But in summary here, Bethancourt added and didn't produce. It was time to move on, and Ali Sanchez gives them a new look, a different look, and a younger look. And so we'll wait to see. He's going to be added to the roster. Wait to see what he can, produce. There is, a degree of capability in Ali Sanchez, but he's been a prospect and has been knocking around for years, literally years, since 2014. So it's 10 years as pretty much a minor leaguer. So it's a long, long time doing what he's been doing. But he has definitely has shown signs in 2023 as 26 years old. He was OPSing at 866. Predominantly, he was hitting 311 at that point, so that was encouraging. An OPS generally, like I said, of 866, and an OBP though of 375. So at a triple level, it's encouraging. He's only 27 years of age. Why not? Why not have a look? No doubt. So we're going to talk about Jesus Luzardo shortly and where we're at with that one, because I did talk about it a few episodes ago that, with Jesus Luzardo and his back, there's no need for the Marlins to press through this at this point, considering the situation. And so I was very interested to see what they did. Before we do that, it's time to let you know about our good friends over at Stitch Fix. Yes, sir. And that instant confidence boost you get from an outfit that makes you look really good, right? That's what I get with Stitch Fix. You can easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new on-trend favorites that will work for you. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. The bigger, the better. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required, guys. And they send just 5 pieces just for me based on my preferences, outfit recommendations, and pro styling advice. I keep what works and send back the rest. My stylist always sends just the right pieces, and the fit is on point. It's like they have the style ESP. I don't know how they do it, but they just get me. So, style that makes you feel as good as you look. Almost mispronounced that. Now's the best time to get started at stitchfix.com/MLB and get $100 off. That's $25 off your first 4 fixes for a limited time only. That's stitchfix.com/MLB for $100 off. stitchfix.com/MLB. Must redeem within 7 days of sign up. Offer does not include kids' fixes. All right, guys, welcome back to Locked On Marlins with me, Peter Pratt. Happy Friday, guys. The sun is shining here in the UK. Feeling good. And a Mariners series is on deck here for the Marlins. Trevor Rogers going this evening after one of Trevor's best starts probably of his career, particularly in terms of length, i.e. the number of innings. So very interested to see what version of Trevor Rogers we get against the Seattle Mariners, who, man, oh man, the Mariners, they are effectively the Marlins, but better in terms of the pitching this year in particular, which, is probably a little bit unfair to compare against for the Marlins because we have no Sandy, no Yuri. But the Mariners, led by their pitching, the defense is better, and the offense is better, but the offense hasn't been setting the world alight either. So they're effectively the Marlins, but on steroids, but not on steroids actually. But you know what I'm saying? Like it's going to be a very interesting series, and what could be a pretty close series. In fact, I get the sense that it could be a pretty close series, a low-scoring one. Obviously, the Marlins struggle to put up runs against the Nats. They didn't struggle as much against the Cardinals. So I'm interested to see what version of the Marlins offense we get. Naturally, the key question will be is how many lefties are we facing against the Mariners? That will be the question, because if the Marlins are facing a lefty, then you can just forget about it. The offense will be dead. They're likely to lose that game. It has been unreal, the struggles of this offense and the Marlins in general against left-handed starters. But nevertheless, Trevor Rogers going this evening. Kirby's going in game 1, so that's encouraging. That means that we've got a righty there. Gilbert's going in game 2, actually, so that's another righty. Let's see what's happening Sunday. Oh, actually, it's 3 righties for the Mariners. Braxy Garrett will be going, Trevor Rogers, and we'll wait to see what happens on the Saturday game. That was supposed to be Jesus Luzardo's start. And let's talk about Jesus Luzardo. Daniel Alvarez from El Extra Base reporting that he is expected to miss the next start. As I mentioned, that was due for Saturday. For me, I am relieved in many ways that the Marlins and Jesus Luzardo were being sensible about the situation. What we saw from Jesus Luzardo last time was the velo way down, 3-4 miles an hour down. Skip Schumacher spoke about it after the game and let us know that actually he was dealing with a lower back ailment, but wanted to push through, wanted to pitch through it, etc. I think he got up to 77 pitches in the end, 5 innings. He took one for the team. And this is where really the team needs to protect the player from himself. And this, for me, I'm interested to see if this becomes an IL stint or if this is just we're going to skip a start and maybe he just needs a few extra days. But for me, at this point of the year, and considering Jesus Luzardo and how important he is to the Marlins generally, I'm relieved that there is a degree of caution, significant degree of caution being applied to this situation. There is no need to push Jesus Luzardo through. Everyone wants to play every game, right? Like Luzardo won't want to be missing time. But the Marlins at this point, and brace yourself for this now, it is the 21st of June. But the Marlins at this point are 24 games under 500. 24 games under 500. And so if there is a twinge, if there is a niggle, if there is any doubt on any guys, in particular guys that are above average big leaguers, then you must proceed with caution. There is no need to push the ticket here, particularly in a year where we've seen so many horrendous pitching injuries, so many long-term injuries. And that would be the worst case situation here. And so I'm relieved that they're skipping the start. I'm interested to understand what the future will be here. Will this be an IL stint? And will that then kind of take Luzardo out until you look at, it's the 21st of June now. Let's say he does go on the IL. It's a 15-day IL stint. They'll backdate it as best they can. But that's still you're looking 10th of July before he can start doing anything probably, and, et cetera, et cetera. See, by the time Luzardo's back, he's probably mid to end of July. And we know what's around that timeline as well. So very interesting timing here for Luzardo. It hasn't been his best campaign. The Marlins are actively listening on everyone, as we know. But I am delighted they are proceeding with caution. And there's no desperation to move Luzardo in this window. You don't have to move him in this window. It's not an expiring contract. Yes, there may be teams that are more desperate because they are in the mix and in the hunt this year, but everyone's in the mix and in the hunt apart from the Marlins and Rockies in the NL. So, if a deal presents itself, great. But considering Luzardo's this is going to be the second niggle and the performance isn't quite where it was last year, you have to wonder if, the Marlins will be able to realize the value on Luzardo that they hold. I think that's the really, really interesting thing. I'm going to talk about the All-Star caps shortly. We're going to segment over to the All-Star game generally. But before we do that, it's time to let you know again about our good friends over at the Tax Network USA. And here at Locked On Marlins, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Election season. And just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. And with over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, BBB, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000. Reminder on that number, it's 1-800-549-1000, or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. See the link in this episode description below. Welcome back to Locked On Marlins. Final segment here with me, Peter Pratt, on Friday, the 21st of June. Hope everyone is feeling good. Like I said, the first beer, maybe the only beer. It's kicked in. Hit me hard. It's been a busy, busy week. Feeling jaded. But hopefully some Marlins baseball will bring me to life. I just wanted to finish here on the All-Star caps that have been revealed. What do you think? What's your thoughts on these caps? Because it's fair to say there's a lot of mixed reviews, I would say. But I think they generally kind of blend into the Marlins color scheme in many ways. And so they kind of look and feel familiar to us Marlins fans, whereas maybe other clubs would be like, what the hell are these? So my snap reaction is, I kind of like them because the color scheme is familiar. But like I said, a lot of other teams, they are less enamored by these. So I think that's really interesting. More generally on the All-Star piece, which is what I really want to talk about rather than All-Star caps or game hats or lids or whatever we call these things. But I did want to talk about the All-Star game specifically. Obviously, every club is represented. Ryan Weathers is out at the moment. I think fundamentally from a Marlins perspective, there's two very clear options. And those options are Tanner Scott and Jazz Chisholm Jr. I'm very interested to see the way this plays out, to be honest with you. I don't actually know who selects the players that aren't voted for but then represent an organization. Who makes that call? I don't actually know the answer to that. Let me know in the comments. If I'd have looked it up, I'd probably be able to find it out pretty quickly, but I actually don't know as I record this and speak now, which is bad planning on my part. But where I was going with that was it's hard to see anyone that would have any degree of negativity associated with Tanner Scott. The dude, I spoke about it with JD from Locked On Cardinals a few days ago. Tanner Scott at this point he's just built different. In some ways, Tanner Scott is the reliever version of Sandy Alcantara. They're just built different. These guys are straight up animals. There's just no other equivalents in Major League Baseball. And so, in my opinion, Tanner Scott is the most likely Marlins All-Star representative. However, it wouldn't be Locked On Marlins, and it would be unfair of me not to call out that I believe Jazz Chisholm Jr. is absolutely in the running. The interesting bit is who votes for these. And is it the players? Is it the manager of each respective club? Is it the NL manager, the All-Star manager? Like, how are these decisions made? What we know, what we've seen with the Athletic poll, anonymous poll, but it's fair to say that there's some degree of negativity around Jazz and maybe other players, how he's seen, what the PR vibes are, the aura. I don't know. There's some negativity around that. And so would that hinder him? Would that impact him in terms of getting the nod for an All-Star appearance, a second All-Star appearance for Jazz Chisholm Jr.? Wait and see. Wait and see on that. If we look at who deserves it, I think Jazz does deserve to be representing the Marlins in the outfield. I think the outfield in general for the NL, in terms of the options available, is pretty weak. And I think Jazz deserves a spot. The problem we've got here is, as always, the big fan bases get their players on the lists and the votes, etc., etc. We've seen that. Adam Duvall, who's been crap this year, frankly, is like 12th in fan voting because the Bravos are just immense at voting for their guys. An immense fan base, so dedicated to All-Star voting. I mean, they must have some sort of like crazy bot farm set up in Atlanta to just pummel the votes for their players. Like I said, Adam Duvall, he's been crap this year. And he's voted at the moment way above Jazz. I think Jazz isn't even in the top 20. He should be, but he isn't. Jazz has he's the right type of person in many ways to be at an All-Star weekend. We saw it. I mean, a classic, legendary conversation, right? I think it was Big Papi that, asked him, was like, who's got more swag, you or Tim Anderson? And it was a glorious clip. Jazz give it the old, come on now. He knew. Jazz was like, who that is. But, he fits the profile pretty well of an All-Star weekend. There's a lot of hype around Jazz, right? So we'll wait to see. But either of those guys, frankly, deserve it. Tanner Scott's been one of the best closers in the game, unquestionably, for the past couple of years. He is the reliever, the closer version in many ways of Sandy Alcantara, just built different. Back-to-back days against the Cards. 6-out saves, 4-out saves. Like, he's doing it all this year. He just wants to pitch. He's an animal. He hunts outs. And, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see the representative. From a Caps perspective, I think the Caps are nice, but primarily because they're very akin to the Marlins color scheme. And so, we're used to that color and we feel like it works. Other clubs are less keen. Nevertheless, that's ended there, guys, on Friday. I appreciate you making Locked On Marlins your first listen and joining me, Peter Pratt, on this one. Be back, of course, next week as we look back on a Mariners series. I think it's going to be a close series. I think the Mariners are a version of the Marlins, a better version this year, but I think they are built similar. And so we'll wait to see who takes this series. I look forward to seeing you then.